Woo.
Got it.
Hi, Emily Shaw.
Hi, Amber Field.
I'm so happy to be hanging out with you tonight.
Me too. We didn't have to go outside, and it's storming, monsooning outside, and we still get to hang out. It's great.
I know. It is yucky outside, but it's the sun is out and it's raining. That always is very confusing to me.
Yeah, that is weird.
Oh, so anyways, hi friends. This is Amber Fields with the Courageous Love podcast. My guest today is Emily Shaw, and I'm so excited that I think that God's timing is like super perfect for everything. And he brought you into my life at like the perfect time, and we were really fast friends.
Yeah, our first conversation.
Right.
Was amazing.
Like right out of the gate, super open, very honest, and that's just who you are. So,
and you.
Thank you. Emily is a fierce and masterful sales leader, trainer, and consultant. She is a mama of 2 beautiful girls and married to your bestie.
Yeah.
I love how you are the invitation for personal conversations, and you bring, like we talked about, this level of vulnerability that allows others to feel safe, to be open also. And most of all, what I love about you is that you are an overcomer.
Oh, thank you. That's a nice way to put it. I like that term. I've never been described like that before. That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
You're welcome. When I heard your story, it was just, that's the word that came to me, because for all the things that you've gone through in your life. And first of all, I feel really special and privileged that you're willing to share this with me and to share this with the audience, our viewers. This is a very vulnerable place. Courageous Love podcast is about people sharing their stories that showed them how to be courageous and how to love themselves so that they could love others. And just really thankful that you're willing. But I knew from the minute we started sharing each other's stories, we were a kindred spirit. So
yeah, we had a lot in common.
We did. So the thing I want to hop into is just a little bit about you. Where are you from? Are you Indie native? How did you get here? If you're not, tell the audience a little bit about you.
Okay, I know people always say like that should be the easiest topic, and it's so challenging. It's like, where was I born? All of a sudden, I can't remember anything. No. I was born in Indy at St. Vincent, but I did not grow up here. My parents, my dad was a traffic engineer for, well, I guess this was before that. I was 3. I was 0 to 3. I don't know what he did. I think he was opening Red Roof Inns at the time. And my parents divorced when I was 3. At the time, we lived in New Jersey. And then my mom moved back for a hot second into her grandmother's apartment, which was below my grandparents' apartment. And that will forever remain the best year of my childhood ever. My pop, rest in peace, is one of, if not the most amazing person I've ever known. And we had a very special relationship, and I got to spend a lot of time with him that year and still remember it vividly. Although I don't remember a lot of my childhood, that was very impactful to me. From there, my mom moved to Ohio, was a single mom. She was an aerobics instructor and a dental hygienist assistant, and just kicking it on her own in an apartment with me. And then eventually she met my stepdad. We bebopped around the tri-state area. I spent a lot of time in Kentucky eventually, still trying to shake that accent. It comes out when I've had things other than tea to drink and or I'm very upset. And then it gets a little crazy. I was in the northern suburbs of Chicago for a bit, which I'm sure we will talk about eventually. Then back to Kentucky for a specific reason that I think is coming up too. And then eventually decided, Michigan was in there too. Anyway, eventually decided to come to IUPUI set up camp in Indy, and I've been here since. So I've been here since I was about 20.
Yes. So you're a little traveling. You've just been around and seen a lot of different things, which I think is
Yeah.
cool because you're
I think
not.
I was the new kid at like 7 different schools between first grade and 12th grade. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that afforded me some skill sets and breaking the ice and not being afraid to talk to anybody and making friends quickly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I had to, because a lot of those schools were in very rural places where those kids had been friends since kindergarten and everybody knew each other in the town. And I was the weird kid with a different accent than everybody else, regardless of where I was. It always was a different accent than
Yep.
everyone. So yeah, I was weird. It's still weird, I guess.
It's okay to be weird. And you're no stranger to being a single mom because
Nope.
you've lived that life with your mom, and then you were a single mom also. So
That's
let's
right.
kind of but before we pick up into that, because that's another set of
Overcoming.
of overcoming a whole new set of challenges and opportunities in our life. Dive into, so you, at what age did you become a Christian or learn about Christ?
Oh man, I feel like I'm still doing the latter. But the former, there are different stages in my life where I would have stood up and said, I am. There's never been a stage in my life where I've ever stood up and said I'm not. But there seem to be these moments where I can recall being maybe reignited with my faith, or maybe my heart was set on fire again because it had smoldered out a little bit. So it's a hard question to answer because, along with a lot of weird head trash from another story, but I think, I remember so I had to start traveling by myself from the age of 3 when my parents divorced till forever. And that time it was the 80s. You just stuck a kid on a plane and you were like, it's probably gonna be fine. You got these little wings and a flight attendant took care of you.
Well, on the other side, right? Like,
yeah.
We'll meet you at the gate.
Yeah, I got to see the cockpit and talk to the pilots and collect trash, which I thought was amazing at the time. So the weird thing is from being a small child, I remember sitting next to people on the plane, never having a problem talking to strangers, which glad that worked out okay. And I would witness to people on the plane or on the bus next to me. And it was like this thing that eventually turned into this pattern where I would get on the plane and be like, okay, listen, don't make me do it. Don't stop it. Like trying to rationalize with God, like, this one looks kind of mad. Like, let's not though. I'm a child. But some of that was in there too. Like, I'm just a kid.
Right.
But I would get this like overwhelming sense of you, like this loud, like, you have to talk to this person. Like, I couldn't deny the presence of what I was supposed to do or what I felt like I was supposed to do. And these adults some of them would cry, some of them would laugh when I brought it up, like, how did you know? I was like, I don't know anything. I'm a kid. And some of those conversations lasted for hours. Some of them lasted 5 to 10 minutes. So, and I don't know that I understood everything at that time, obviously, but my heart was on fire to do it then. And you remember like other moments, maybe in Bible study, or other moments when you're at like a kids camp, right? And they're just moments I remember sort of God breathing this life into me. But technically baptized 18, I think.
Yeah. The Holy Spirit was active inside of you long before that, though.
Right.
Clearly. Like, if you're a kid,
yeah.
And I think that's the cool thing about the innocence of it, right? They can talk about God and it's not weird and there's no head trash around it. Like, are they going to judge me? What are they going to think of me? Like,
didn't care. Yeah.
No, you didn't care. You
No.
didn't care. So back then you were in relationship, right? Like you were having fun and you were just like loving being a child of God and sharing, the word and helping. You didn't know that you were expanding the kingdom probably the way that you
No.
but you
Didn't even know
weren't.
I was supposed to. Just,
That it's just part of it, right?
yeah.
But then something happened where being in a relationship with God became a religion, right? Became like,
Yeah.
oh, now there's condemnation.
Right. And a
Now
lot
there's
of it. Yeah.
and now yeah, and now there's heavy.
Mhm.
And yeah. So if you're ready, you want
Sure.
to dive into what's next?
Sure. Yes. I've not publicly shared this story ever. So it was like a
Listen,
deep breath, but yes.
Emily, there's probably a reason why it didn't go live.
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
that everything happens the way that it's exactly supposed to.
Yeah.
And for your level of comfortability, it wasn't live, it was recorded,
That
right?
makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Didn't even think about that. Yep.
So here we are.
Um, okay. So my mom married my stepdad when I was 7. And from the jump, that relationship was very tumultuous, mine and my stepdad's. There's those two, but I'm not trying to air their dirty laundry. So it was just a struggle constantly between the two of us. Even as a 7-year-old, as a little kid, it was strife and struggle. And of course, as I came more into my own opinion or thought patterns, puberty, hormones, it really just continued to decay more and more and more. And we were spending a lot of time together because I would travel with him. He's a teacher. He taught about 45 minutes an hour away from our house one way. And my mom really wanted me to go to that school because he was there. And I mean, that logically makes sense. But man, those 2 hours in the car today, every day, him being in my school all day, being there at home, just and when that relationship was already so challenging, that just really piled on. And so it created more and more struggle and strife within my household. Lines were drawn, sides were chosen, and it felt like I was in a battle alone.
Mhm.
And when I was 12, my little brother was born, and the relationship between he and my stepdad was completely opposite.
Mhm.
And that really added to the hurt that I had as a preteen. And because of that, maybe not because of that, for whatever reason, I started to seek out attention in sort of other ways. And maybe not even attention. I think it was really connection that I was seeking out. I felt
Yeah.
really misunderstood at my house. I felt lonely. I felt ostracized. I felt like I was the bad one constantly. And to a kid who grew up wanting to be the good one, right? And being so, I would die over doing something wrong. Like my mom still tells stories to this day. Like if you lied, it was like 5 seconds before you were in my room crying, like, oh, I did, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I just can't live with myself. And so that was pressure I put on myself as a kid. So feeling later like I was just inherently bad for my existence was really, really heavy. Um, and so my mom, we would have these big explosive fights at home, everybody involved, but my mom really kind of stepped back because she was so overwhelmed with the darkness of everything that she thought that maybe my stepdad and I just needed to figure it out together. And she was convoluting the whole thing, which she now knows, and we've had open conversation about that was the last thing that I needed. I didn't need another person that I trusted to step further away from me and sort of just feel like they gave up, right? So the threats started coming, and I'm going to send you away. I'm going to send you away. Probably when I was 14, they might have started when I was 13. Really kicked into high gear when I was 15. And by the time I was 16, I was being driven up to a compound in a suburb of Chicago called Long Grove to a family's house that I had never met before. I didn't know anything about this place. I had never seen pictures of it. I'd never spoken to anyone. I think my mom had one conversation with them, maybe. I don't even actually know if that's true. But my grandparents were, they had a ministry and they would speak at conferences, and they met these people at this conference. And so it was kind of like they came back and were convinced this was the answer. These people charmed them at dinner and had all these glory stories to tell them about the kids that they had helped.
Like right out of the movies.
Yes, right. Yep. Like a solution being hand delivered to you on a silver platter. And how bad could it be, right? Because they met at a Christian conference where these people were speaking, so they must be trustworthy. And thus began a really, really dark few years of my life. When I first got there, there were 3 different houses where kids lived. 2 were on the property, 1 was off the property. I was put in the main house with the main sort of owner people that ran it. And there were 5 kids in that house at the time. And then down the lane, like down the long driveway, there were another 3 or 4 kids. And then at this other house, there were another 3 kids or so. And when I first got there, it was a big welcoming Labor Day party cookout thing. We're so excited and happy to have people here, and there were kids everywhere. And I had been alone, right? I'd been feeling lonely and destitute for years at this point. And just having other kids around that were my age and a lot of people, I thought, okay, this is a safe place for me. This is a place that, you know, I could really thrive. And my mom stayed the night at a different house, which should have been a red flag at the time. They had her sleep in a different house than me so that I could get to know the kids. But really, the great separation had just already started immediately. And she came back the next morning really kind of panicky about it. I think she knew in her gut. I think she felt it. She came into my then room that had been assigned to me and was like, just tell me you don't want to be here and I'll take you back. She was like crying. She's like, just tell me. And I don't know why, probably because I was meant to be there in some capacity, right? It's part of my story. But I said, come back to what? Like, we don't have anything left for me to come back to. And I was pretty candid with her. It's like, it breaks my heart to tell you that, but all there's going to be is more fighting and more darkness. And just, this might be the only chance that we have at this point. Oh, that makes me choked up talking about it, because little did I know that was, oh man, you know, and it's hard for me to say that because I am grateful for all of my experiences. And I do believe that they all contributed to the person that I am, and even really understanding my gifts and what I bring to this world. But so I found out in a matter of 6 days, right? It didn't take very long. I was crying about missing my little brother and said something to another kid about it. And that kid went downstairs to sort of take a stand for me, because they were calling me down to dinner or something. I don't remember what it was. But he stood up for me in some capacity, and that did not go well. I was brought downstairs. I was screamed at and told that I was a manipulative liar. I was spit on. I was screamed at. No wonder your family doesn't want you. We can already see the evil in you. I was like grabbed and thrown into another room, and just like sort of head in hands, because this other kid was now freaking out too. And there were chairs flying, and that was the moment where I really realized, like, oh no, like, what have I done? And from there, it progressively got worse. Oh man, let's see. There were things that on the outset didn't seem so terrible, like getting up really early, taking care of your room and making your bed, getting downstairs for Bible study. And then that turned into just memorizing King James versions of Psalms so that you could eat later. So it's like, oh, things don't seem so bad. And now you can't eat, right, if you don't memorize it. And there were some kids there with what I now know is like extreme ADHD, dyslexia, like things that this place didn't believe in. So they didn't believe in mental illness. They didn't believe in even therapy, and everything was just wrong and bad unless you were perfect.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot of shaming. All Bible studies ended up being about the mistake that you had made the day before that was so innocuous that you didn't know you were making it. I have a lot of memories of the head leader woman like hitting the back of her head and screaming at me, "You need to break your stiff neck," and just so much legalism, and fire and brimstone, but really everything hinged on shame. And looking back, right, how else are you going to control 15 kids in a room other than to completely humiliate them, shame them, and break them down so that they don't even want to fight for themselves or believe that they should.
Right.
So I heard just a lot of things like, I was pretty Jezebel and I wasn't really a real believer. I just told everybody what I was or thought that I was, but I didn't really know what it meant. And then so my own faith started to come under attack. I'd never questioned my faith before then. And I definitely started to in that place. And I don't know how to describe day in and day out shame of, like, I would be in an algebra class, algebra 3, and or no, I'm so sorry. I think it was actually pre-calc, something crazy, right? Some hard math. And the people that ran the house also taught the classes, and then they had an adjunct professor teach some other ones, but because they were all doctors. But I would be in algebra 3, like intently trying to figure out what this person is talking about. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to not graduate high school. And the instructor would stop and say, "Everyone put your pencils down. Look at Emily. Look at how desperately she wants you to stare at her. Look at how lovely she believes that she is. Everyone, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're all going to stare at Emily because she so desperately needs your attention." And I would sit there like sobbing while this narrative continued for at least 2 minutes. And if the other kids didn't stare, they got it too, right? So there wasn't an opportunity for kids to stick up for other kids because then you would be on the chopping block the next day. And there was never any kind of that expectation because we all wanted to protect the other. I spent a lot of nights in my room laying next to a vent because it led to the bedroom next to mine, helping my very ADHD friend memorize Psalms until like 4 o'clock in the morning, or listening to him just sob, because all of our parents were duped by these people 110%. And some of that is confirmation bias, that you gotta feel like you made the right decision. So you're gonna look for
Yeah.
the thing you want to see, because I'm sure it was a very hard decision to make. But you just felt abandoned by the people that were supposed to be there for you, and just hopeless because they were snowed. And if you ever tried to say anything or try to send some sort of any code or anything, it was twisted into, "You're a manipulative liar." So it all just there it was just this revolving door of suck for a long time. But because that's so powerful, because shame is so powerful, you become brainwashed that you are this worm, That was the constant phrase. You're a worm in God's eyes. He can't stand the sight of you. You disgust him. Yeah. Because you're covered in sin, and right. And so you really start to believe that, especially when your meals are being restricted, you are on lack of sleep. It has all the hallmarks of really how cults are run and why they work. So yeah.
How long were you there?
So I only needed to be there for a year because it was my senior year. But by the time it was over, I was so terrified to leave because I thought I wasn't ready, because they told me I wasn't ready to go, that I would go back all summer. I got a job in Michigan, on Lake Michigan, that was close because they had a condo at that same place. So they were always there, or I was driving back. And then the only reason that I didn't stay up there, I will give this credit to my mom, somewhere in the middle of my first day and my last day, when I was still like, I don't remember if I thought it would help my mom or if I thought I was sending a message to my mom, or if it was both. One of those was subconscious, right? One of those was a conscious choice. But I started asking, they recorded the Bible studies, and I started asking if I could send those to my mom. I remember saying, this will really help her. But I was so manipulative. Who knows what?
Right.
I'm kidding.
Right. I'm sending cryptic messages to my mom through the Bible study, right? Like,
yeah, could have been. Who knows? But she didn't listen to them for like 6 months. And then she just randomly was house cleaning or something someday and put one in, and like the hair on the back of her neck stood up. And then she started listening to them more and more and more, and was like, oh my gosh. And I remember her calling me and like making plans to come get me after graduation. And I'm like crying, like, I'm not ready to go. I'm not ready to go. They're telling me I'm not ready to go. They're telling me you're not a Christian and you don't understand. And I was so confused, right, after being there for a year and subject to all of that. And she did say, Emily, if I have to drive up there and grab you by your hair and drag you out of there, I am coming to get you. And it wasn't that summer, but she did enroll me in a college in Kentucky, and like chose my major and everything, did come up and get me and all of my bags, and they drove me straight to that college. So I still didn't get to go home, or didn't feel really like,
right,
there was an excited like welcome home sort of. It was we're dropping you off in another place, albeit not as bad of a place.
yeah, right.
So that was how I left. But I still continued on my breaks and stuff in that first year of college to go back, because I was so worried that I was still so broken, that I needed to.
I want to vomit. Like, I'm so sick to my stomach, Emily, that this is something that is a part of your story. And that's why I admire you so much, because you would never know that this trauma lives inside of you.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when you told me about it, right? Like the first time, and I was literally heartbroken because, our pastor talked about it this weekend. He was like, you don't have to try anymore. There is no trying in the covering of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But how many years of our life, because of, while that didn't happen to me, I had other things, right? Like our upbringing was very similar, and church was my refuge, right? I would go there to try to get away from all the pain and suffering at home, because I thought that would heal me. But all they're doing over here is causing more pain and shame and guilt, because I was a sinner and I was a teenage sinner doing all kinds of things I shouldn't have been doing, but I was learning. And I didn't learn until recently that, like, hey girl, you're covered. Like, it's done. There are no more things that you have to do to achieve your place in heaven. I was appalled. I was like, what? Like, I don't have to volunteer, and I don't have to do all the things, and I don't have to continue, like, literally nothing. They're like, no, today you go and forever. of course we want you to continue to grow in Christ and, all the things that come after that. But I just, it's the fact that you're a Christian today, after all of that, blows my mind. Like, that's how we know that God is real, and that he implants himself inside of us through the Holy Spirit and lives within us. Because if you can overcome getting through that, you can literally do anything. Like you can. And your story gets worse before it gets better.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, I'm like, so that's just a portion of where it starts, but I think that's where it stemmed from. Can you agree?
100%. Absolutely. Yes. Any pattern that I fell into in my 20s was absolutely a direct reflection of that experience, good or bad. And, I remember when I was there, we had to sing hymns every day, as well as recite King James versions of the Psalms, as well as attend Bible study in the afternoon and in the evening. And I would always request the hymn "Nothing But the Blood," because it was my rebellion, right? It was I just need to hear these words because I know this is true, and I need to hear it every day because I'm not going to hear anything else. And I need to keep singing this from my heart. And I would like sob sometimes while I sang it. Sometimes it was monotonous, but it was just like this thing that I needed to continue to hear. And then, or just as I am. But it was, you just find tiny things to cling to. When I stopped going back, and this will shock no one listening to this episode, when I stopped going back was when the head master that I lived with, he and his wife, when he went to prison for child molestation, because, right. That and the friend that I was laying on the floorboard talking to, that's why he was sobbing. And it kills me, right, that he couldn't tell anyone, and he was suffering on a whole other level than the rest of us were. And there were other children that were as well. But I will never forget, his mom passed away pretty soon after we left in my timeline. I think it was within 5 years, but I remember his dad found me on Facebook and sent me this long thing, like, obviously his life has been horrible for the last few years, but he always talks about you as this light, or this person that was there. And I had other kids come out to me in that experience that had never said that out loud before. I had other kids tell me about how they actually ended up there and what was really going on that their parents still didn't understand or know about. So while it was a dark and horrible time for all of us, and some worse than others, of course, it really was the moment where I realized that I was a good listener, and that people felt safe to share information with me. And that was a skill set that I had. I didn't know that before that. So yeah, silver linings.
I love that you found the you're not a victim of your circumstance, like,
yeah,
you found the good in being in a very terrible situation. And not every Christian is like that. Like, that's the worst of the worst. I actually, it's just torture. Like, yeah. And thankfully, they are not who we get to seek other fellowship, right? That will pour into our gifts, and that will help remind us, and that we don't have to live through that. So Thank you.
Girl, it was not, I did not have it the worst of those kids. Obviously, the aforementioned is horrible, as well as there were kids that were left there for years. I mean, there was a kid that was there for 7 years. I don't know if she ever actually saw her parents again. Like, there were kids whose siblings passed away while they were there. Like, they missed out on that time with them. And by the way, that person was brought there because they had attempted to commit suicide days before they were brought to this place. Can you imagine the suffering that was happening for that person? So I never want it to be like, I'm not a victim of my circumstance, but that's because there are too many kids there that had it so much worse than I did. And their stories are not mine to share, but
Right. And they don't need to be, because yours was enough, right? To get to get the picture that, like, look, not every spirituality and Christianity, like, we just keep putting all of the words to it. I think that religion is individual, like it is personal. It is everybody has and gets to believe what they want to believe, but that type of projection and that type of, it just makes for a really bad name for loving Jesus, right? Like,
right.
if you love Jesus, how in the world did they do that? And it's because everybody's at choice, and you can weaponize it, or you can use it for good. And God gave them choice, right? He gives you free will, and not everybody uses it for the good. And so
and I think you can develop this really weird, twisted sense that you are doing it for the good, right? Or that you are making these, from our perspective, dark, horrible choices for the good, right? These people wrote books about how Christian is Christian counseling, and I don't know, other books that they wrote, that they thought, right, that they were bringing truth into a world that had gone soft and had turned inward and worshiped themselves as opposed to Christ. And they thought that they were bringing this harsh reality of the Bible to the masses, and had convinced themselves. I really truly believe that they believe that. Does it make it right or not?
No,
but
they do. Of course they believe it to be right, or they wouldn't be so passionately doing all the crazy, horrible things that they're doing, right? Like, in their mind, it was right. And I could see from a very small, look, my family thought it was right too. Like, those who brought me into religion, singing the same songs out of the same Bible version that you're in, like all those same things, taught it on a very, just not as harsh, right? Like, they were teaching it, but not like that. So I can imagine, like, when I can just, there just really aren't any words. So what I want to close us out, what I want, knowing what you know now, what is the advice that you would give someone seeking Christ, seeking spirituality, seeking that, like, something higher than myself, who's had a bad experience? What do you say to them?
Oh man, I want to say like 100 things. First, I want to hug them and just sit with them and just say, I get it, right? I don't know if there's a singular piece of advice, but a few things come to mind immediately. One is to give yourself grace. I joke sometimes, half-heartedly joking sometimes. There are days where my faith is on fire, and there are days where I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's aliens. I don't know. Because I know that I am imperfect, but I know that he is perfect, and he will not leave or forsake me. Is he thrilled with my doubt? Probably not, right? But there are days that are harder than others, and that's okay. It's a wax and wane sort of thing. And I think all Christians experience that, but we don't talk about it. It's scary to be the one that says, my faith is sometimes on fire and my faith is sometimes non-existent, and I have to do everything I can to cling to it. and conjure it up. And half the time I'm like saying stuff in my brain that I'm disconnected from because I'm like, there's no way this is real. And then there are other days where you're like, oh, I just watched a miracle, right? And there's everything in between. And I think it's portrayed as if Christianity is just this solid rock you stand on every day that you never waver off of, you never struggle with, and shit's hard, y'all.
Every day. The theme that's been running over the last, I don't know, couple months of my life and through this series is surrender.
No, you didn't.
I did. and
you know our friend Amanda Thomas?
Yeah.
That was my word 2 days ago. But go on.
That's right. Here we are.
Okie dokie.
Yes. It's just been the thing. It's the theme of my life right now too, is just every day I've got to surrender to him. Rebecca reminded me of this, for our friend Rebecca Fleetwood Hessian. She reminded me because I was like, oh yeah, I'm surrendering. It's good. And it was like a blanket surrender, right? Like, okay, I got to say it to you once and then you'll cover me every day.
Yep.
No.
Yep. I was telling Rebecca and Amanda recently, like there are some days, because I'm working on surrendering too, failing miserably so far. And I'll be praying and I will be saying these words in my mind. And it's like behind my back, I still hold like half of it. Like, okay.
Like the
yeah, right. You're totally in
really.
control. I'm just gonna hold this like just to help you out or whatever, or it's like, oh, that's for a lot of whatever stupid rationalization I make. And it's like always just sort of like not quite getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's challenging. And that's the other thing I would say is we both know a couple people that will hold us in those moments of dark wavering. I've told Rebecca before, like, how big is a mustard seed? Like, how big is it? I got like a quarter of a mustard seed over
right.
here. And she's like, okay, I'll get the other 3/4, and together, right, we'll have a whole one. And just surrounding yourself with people like that you can trust to be real with, who aren't going to turn around and judge and shame you for experiencing this moment, who will say, I get it. What does support look like from me right now?
Yeah.
I saw this verse earlier. I thought of you. You don't have to respond. Like, just give to you without taking from that relationship or that experience of spirituality or harming it. That is incredibly important as well. So those are the two things. And the last thing, I guess, is even if you think you've given up on him, he hasn't given up on you. He comes back for the one. He leaves the 99 to come back for the one, and you're the one. And you can wrestle with it, and you can fight it, and you can stand out in your field by yourself and stomp your little hooves like, I'm the one. And he's coming back for you. If there's a twinge in your heart and you're wondering if it's me, it's you. It's absolutely you.
There's nothing else to say after that. Like, that's like the that's where I'm going to end it, because I'm like, that's like the best advice ever. And like, this was so good. And I had to fight back tears like 3 times. I'm like,
me too.
I'm going to lose it. And then it's going to be
drinking my tea.
Yeah. I'm like, it's yuck. Like, no one wants to. I'm going to stop recording now, actually, so we can how do I stop this thing?